the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. It is Tuesday, April 23rd, coming to you just like always right here from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studio and 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio and 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation. So we're blessed to get an opportunity to talk to you tonight. We're blessed to get an opportunity to we got two shows going at the same time. We got our radio show that's live. We got our social media show that's live. We're taking it to the whole world, and we're taking it to the people of Lubbock who are listening to it on the radio. So in West Texas, not just Lubbock. We got a little bit of a reach around here. So that's what we do with our show. If you haven't ever heard us before, if you're new to the show, that's what goes on here. We talk about health. We talk about health from a subluxation standpoint. That's what I do. I detect and correct subluxations. I am a wellness chiropractor. Couldn't be more proud of it. Just every single day is an opportunity to help people live a better life. So that's what we do. And so it's it's an interesting show tonight because some of the things that I got freed up. You guys know my dad passed away this weekend, and if you guys want to go listen, people have been wondering like, how you feeling? Are you doing okay? And I appreciate all the feedback and all the texts and all the nice things people have said, and I really do appreciate that. But I was listening to John Anderson. I used to love to listen to John Anderson when I was a young person in high school, and just to swinging that guy. Seminole Wind and all those songs that he sang. And I used to own the Countryfied album tape. Back in the day, we had tapes. And the last song on the Countryfied album is There Will Be Peace in the Valley. That's what I was listening to, Peace in the Valley. And I was listening to that today, and I just kind of smiled. And I think we ought to think about peace. I think we really ought to talk about peace for just a second. And what does that mean? And where are we going with this whole thing? Like, are we going to heaven or are we not going to heaven? I mean, come on. Like, and if we are, we should walk around like we are, right? And we should understand that there is a sadness to loss. I totally understand that, and I cried my eyes out every night last week. Before in that transition, and you guys saw me on Friday night. You watched that show. If you didn't watch it, you can go back and watch it. I thought it was pretty touching, but and the sadness does kind of come in waves, and I find it every once in a while that's it's that way. But there was such a peace in the house Sunday, at my mom's house. There's just a peace there, and it is the one victory that we have over this whole thing. And I'm doing great. I really am. I'm a little tired. I'm just a little tired. This daggum allergy thing that I got from cleaning out that flower bed combined with crying my eyes out every night last week set my sinuses off. And now I got it in my throat. So my throat's a little scratchy tonight. And I got it in my throat. And so all that combination is it's just a little fatiguing. It's a little fatiguing, but other than that, I'm great. My dad's out of pain, and he's done with the suffering and the trapping of this body that he was in for a solid 60 years. I mean, if like a guy that can't turn his head, he can't even turn his neck. He lay in the bed in those last few days, and his head, when he lays on his back, his head's that far off the back of the table. Matter of fact, it got to the point where it was almost like vertical, like just because of that horrible ankylosing spondylitis, that horrible arthritis, it just ate him up. I mean, if you had to get kind of in front of him so he could eyeball you. You couldn't, if you sat over to the side of him, he could not turn his head. He couldn't. And the pain in his feet was just, it was horrible. I mean, it was, I don't even know the words to describe the pain in his feet. So we're going to miss him and all that sort of thing. But to me, it's like he just went home, and he will be home after a while. Like that's really the way I feel about it. Like we just all went out, we're out running around, and then he just decided to go home. And so we'll be with him after a while. I'll see him soon. That's the last thing I really said to him. I'll see you soon. And so that Peace in the Valley was a great song. It's just there's just a lot of peace. We're not distraught. My mom's not distraught. My brother and sister are doing fine, as far as I know. My brother's doing fine. I haven't really got a chance to visit with my sister too much, but my brother's doing fine, and I just think we ought to play this game. I think we ought to play this game as if we're champions. I think that whole cross thing means something. I really do. I mean, it's like that gum. Like, do we win this game or do we not win this game in the end? That's the thing. And if we don't understand that, we got some issues to deal with. And if you don't understand that, I'd talk to you about it. But this is not the end all be all of the whole thing. I can tell you because there's no possible way I could come do a show. There's no possible way I could come do a show 5 nights a week for almost 8 months now that we've been doing this show and talk about the innate intelligence and talk about the healing of the body and talk about the brain and talk about all the things that we talk about on the show and not believe in an intelligence is greater than us. I just can't. Me personally, I can't do it. I can't figure it out. And if you're really talking about that level, if you're really talking about that level of intelligence that we call God, and you really believe that whole story about Jesus, which I believe that story about Jesus, that he was the Son of God, and he did come to this earth, and he did die on a cross for us, for our Savior, and when at the end, if we believe that, we're going to heaven. Like, I mean, I don't think that's complicated. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And that belief system is the belief system that gets me there. And I'm glad Dad. I really truly believe that Dad made that decision for himself, and I believe that he's sitting up there with his uncle, with my Uncle John and my Uncle Jerry, and my granny probably had coffee ready for him, and the whole thing. So it's okay to have peace. It's okay. I got a little bit of feedback yesterday that I can't believe you're not taking your days off. I can't believe you're not taking a little time and all that sort of thing. I'm like, man, I don't need any more time to sit there and get off my feet and just create more damage to myself. The routine, the one thing that I really had that I want to do a show on sometime pretty soon is I want to do a show on routine, because the last 2 weeks of being out of my routine has been tiresome. It wears you down getting out of your routine. So maybe we'll talk about that sometime this week if we get a chance to talk about that this week. But I think the best thing for me to do is go back to work and get after it. And especially a job like I got, it's the best possible job in the world to me. It's like we're talking about wellness. And I really do. I'm great. We got a little obituary done. They did a great job getting a picture done for him over there at Lake Ridge Chapel. You guys, if you need a place, those guys are fantastic over there. They've been great to us. Let Laura Landis over there, sweetest lady you might ever meet in your life. She took care of Dad and erased a lot of memories for my mom by getting him taken care of and getting him put together so that there could be an identification of the body and all that sort of thing that we have to do, but legally, I guess. And so, and then the obituary's got a beautiful picture of him in his cowboy hat, and yeah, that's where I'm at. That's what I'll learn to know is that man, that spirit of that man that got released from that body. The spirit of that man that got released from that body is free. And now it can roam the universe or however in the heck that happens, and just be up there, not be bound by all of the subluxations. The subluxations, write them down. If you don't understand it, write that word down. If you're driving, don't write anything down. Pay attention to the road. But subluxation, SUBLUXATION. That's it. Subluxation. Sub means less than. Lux means light, and ATION means a place, like a station. So if you are subluxated, you're in a state less than light. And we are the light of the world, which means we come from the light of the world. We come from this whole thing. And so at the end that's where we go home to. And that's where Dad went. And I'm glad he's not subluxated anymore. He doesn't have to be subluxated one more day ever. And wherever he moves to and whatever he does. So just wanted to say that. Peace in the valley. Go back and listen to the words. There's peace. I'm tired and so weary, but I must go along till the Lord comes and calls me away. Right? He was tired and weary and in pain and worn out and suffering, and that suffering is over. And I'm glad for him, and we're good. So just like life works, right? Here comes the next one. We always say in chiropractic, when someone doesn't have anything to do with what we're trying to share with you, then what we always say in chiropractic is next. There's 8 billion people in the world, 300 and something million people in the United States. There's 300,000 people in Lubbock. Just in my own county, there's that many people. So look, I'll try to share this good news with you every single day. I'll try to tell you that the things that help your body function, and it was just like clockwork. Like this morning, one of my people that came to see me, 71 years old, and bad in the hips and all swollen up in the face and swollen up in the arms, and you could tell he's on steroids. I'm like, what's going on with you? And he's like, I said, what medications are you taking? And it's like, well, there's metformin for my diabetes, and there's allopurinol or something for my gout, and then and I said, what about a steroid? You on a steroid too? Yeah, I got a sore on my foot that won't heal. Okay, now that was it. I was like, there's my show right there. There's my show that gets into the whole thing. And that's what I said. I said that last night, maybe, that it's kind of freed me up because I tried to be a little bit nice. I didn't always be very nice, but I tried to be a little bit nice because I was afraid Dad might be listening to the show, and I didn't want to offend him on in his last days of all the stuff that he's going through. But now let's talk about it. Let's talk about it, and let's break it down and see if we can make some sense out of it. And it's going to all wrap. It's going to be kind of all over the place tonight. It's going to be wrapped into some different things coming at you. But if you're 71 years old and you're taking metformin for diabetes, let's talk about the pathway that you're on. And I can tell you, I've had my dad die from just being worn out from arthritis, which is inflammatory. Arthritis and diabetes, the combination of that. I've had my father-in-law die of diabetes. Probably the two males that were the biggest fans of me in my entire life. Both of those guys died from the same process. And my man that come in this morning, he's got a lot of family that's involved. And I asked him, I said, well, are you ready to die? You got any plans for the future? You think you're going to be around a while, or what? He just started laughing. He just came in because his hips were hurting. And he was like, he just kind of started laughing. He's like, yeah, I do think I have stuff to contribute. And I was like, well, let me tell you how this is going to go for you. Let me show you how this process works and the nonsense that we have in the so-called healthcare field when it comes to this stuff. So let's just kind of walk through some of it. Because what's going on? Let's just talk about metformin. And all I did this afternoon was I just Googled the mechanisms of action of metformin, and I got a NIH article. This was put together by Graham Renna Graham Hardy and Ewan Pearson um, from Divisions of Molecular and Clinical Medicine, School of Medicine, University of Dundee. Division of Cell Signaling and Immunology, School of Life Sciences, University of Dundee. I can tell you these people are smart now. If you guys know people that work in, and if you may be one of them. If you work in a university, if you work at the Division of Molecular and Clinical Medicine at a school of medicine, come on now, you're smart as heck, right? So these guys are breaking it down for us. They're breaking down the mechanisms of actions of metformin. Metformin is a widely used drug that results in clear benefits in relation to glucose metabolism and diabetes-related complications. Yeah, the mechanism underlying these benefits are complex and still not fully understood. It has been shown to reduce hepatic glucose production in your liver. It's been shown to reduce glucose production in your liver. Okay, why do you have, let's break it down. Let's walk through it. Why do you have glucose production in your liver? You have glucose production in your liver because your brain needs three things. Your brain needs glucose, oxygen, and excitability. We're talking about producing glucose in your liver. And why would you do that? Why would your body have a mechanism inside of itself to make more glucose if you needed it? Yeah, exactly. It has it because of their fight or flight response, but it has it because of your brain, right? Because if you were to fast yourself into a state to where now you can't get the glucose into the cells, and because you don't have any glucose available, now we might have to make some new glucose to get that into the bloodstream. We got to get some sugar back into the blood. If I don't eat any sugar, then I'm going to lose my blood sugar because I'm using it up all the time. If I don't put gas in my car, I'm eventually going to run out of gas because my car is using up the gas as I use the car. And so eventually, if I don't ever stop and get gas, then I'm not ever going to be able to, the car is eventually just going to run out. Okay, well, let's just imagine we have a little part of our car engine that makes gas in case we don't have any. That's what gluconeogenesis is, and it's in the liver. That's what we have production of glucose in the liver. We have that for the whatever reason it is, but it's mainly because the brain needs glucose in states of fasting. In the middle of the night, if you eat supper at 6 o'clock and then you get to the middle of the night and then your blood sugar goes down, what's going to happen? You're going to release. You're going to get that stress response because the stress response is going to fire from the brain down to the adrenal gland to tell the adrenal gland to release cortisol, and cortisol is going to increase blood sugar. We're going to get an increased amount of blood sugar. We're going to start this whole process. We're going to get that liver to dump some of that sugar into the bloodstream so that now we can operate our brain at night without running out of glucose. If you've ever known anybody that becomes hypoglycemic, a hypoglycemic person, it can't function. Like when your blood sugar drops, if your blood sugar drops down there about 40, like it's like, whew, your brain is like, whoa, this is not good. I can't function. So we need to have that ability to make that glucose in the body, right? But why would we be having a problem with that? What is the problem with our diabetic, our type 2 diabetic, that's having a problem with their glucose inside their liver? Why would metformin, and let's just go back because I want to just make sure that we're understanding this. Physiologically, metformin has been shown to reduce hepatic glucose production, yet not all of its effects can be explained by this mechanism, and there's an increasing evidence of a key role for the gut. Yeah, okay. Metformin has been shown to act via both the AMP activated protein kinase dependent and independent mechanisms. And this sentence right here should blow your mind. By inhibition of the mitochondrial respiration, but also perhaps by inhibition of mitochondrial glycerophosphate dehydrogenase. Sometimes I got to get my tongue right to say those words. and a mechanism involving the lysosome. But let's just go back up for a second and let's just talk about by inhibition of the mitochondrial respiration. Now, what do we do every day in wellness? What do we do every day in wellness? We try to protect that mitochondria. It's one of the most important things possible inside your whole system is to protect the mitochondria. We want to make sure that we are protecting the mitochondria. And we can get down here a little bit further. Metformin is traditionally thought to act on the liver to improve blood glucose levels, and several lines of evidence support this. First, in mice lacking the organic cation transporter, which take up little or no metformin in the liver, metformin was ineffective. So if you can't get metformin in the liver, it's going to be ineffective. Okay. Second, tracer studies in humans show that metformin lowers liver glucose production with minimal impact on peripheral insulin-mediated glucose uptake. However, when only placebo-controlled studies were analyzed, the impact of metformin on endogenous glucose production was not significant unless concomitant drug-induced reduction in plasma insulin were used to adjust the EGP, the endogenous glucose production. Third, as it will be summarized here, multiple studies in mouse hepatocytes and transgenic mice provide evidence of a role of metformin in reducing hepatogluconeogenesis and insulin sensitivity. Yes, given that gluconeogenesis is an energy-intensive process, consuming 6 ATP, we don't need that. Hepatocytes need to balance the demand for ATP with the supply, with later primarily provided by mitochondria. Metformin accumulates within the mitochondria to concentrations up to 1,000 times higher than in extracellular medium. Because metformin carries a positive charge and the membrane potential across the plasma membrane and mitochondrial inner membrane drive the metformin into the cell and subsequently into the mitochondria. The most intensively studied mitochondrial action of metformin is the inhibition of the complex 1 of the respiratory chain, which suppresses ATP production. You know how metformin works in your liver to make you healthier? It blocks your mitochondria from functioning to make power, which ends up causing mitochondrial respiratory problems. It inhibits the ability of the mitochondria to breathe. That's what it does. This is right here from the geniuses at the University of Medical whatever Dundee, right? The geniuses, and I don't say that facetiously. I'm saying that seriously. I know dang well if they work over there, just like the people that work over at UMC or Texas Tech Health Science Center, those guys are smart as heck, right? So when they're telling us this is how it works, I got a good feeling. I feel pretty confident that those guys are telling us this is how it works. And they don't even have any idea really what they're telling us. What they're telling us is the way that metformin works to decrease your glucose in your bloodstream is to basically kill your mitochondria's ability to breathe. That doesn't make, does that make sense to you? If you're taking it right now, if you're a diabetic and you're taking it right now, does that make any sense to you? No. Okay. Let's back up though. Let's back up and ask ourselves the question, why would we need to be making all that glucose like that all the time? What would cause us to be making that glucose? Well, we're resistant. We're insulin resistant. We've become insulin resistant, and now we can't pull the glucose out of the bloodstream like we need to, and we're not getting the glucose to the places that it needs to happen. And then what happens is, and so we can't get the glucose out of the bloodstream, so we can't get that blood sugar to be less thick and sticky. And because we can't get that blood sugar to be less thick and sticky, we got serious problems. We've got serious problems. So the pancreas is going to release the insulin so that we can tell the liver to quit making glucose. That's in the middle of the night when your brain needs a little bit of glucose. it's going to release cortisol in your adrenal glands. It's going to kick that whole thing in. It's going to tell you, it's going to say, hey, I need some glucose. There's also some other hormones that are involved in that, but that's one of the ways that's going to do it. So now the liver is going to make a little glucose, but how's the pancreas going to tell the liver to stop making glucose? It's going to use insulin. So now the pancreas releases the insulin to tell the liver, hey, stop making this. But the liver has become insulin resistant, so the liver doesn't stop making it. So now the liver is just going to pump out glucose all night long. So you're going to wake up in the morning and you're going to check your blood sugar and it's going to be 300. Right? You guys know it. You guys know that that's what happens. You check your blood. They did that in Carolina over here. 5-star rated place in Lubbock, Texas. Oh man, we got lucky right there. I was about to say a cuss word on the radio. 5-star rated place to send a person that's got diabetes. You know what they fed him for breakfast? Sugary donuts and refined carbohydrates. And then they took his blood sugar and it was over 300. And they said, whoops, we better give you some insulin. Horrible. You guys stick around. We'll come back right after this break. We'll break that down for you. We'll make you healthier as soon as this is over. They gave us a couple of options when Dad was in the emergency room with one of his times. And do I blame anybody for being in the emergency room other than himself? Absolutely not. That's what I try to tell my guy today. Hey, look, because what he told me, you know what he told me? He said, everybody's got something for me to do. And I said, I've heard those sentences before. That's what my dad used to say. You know what he used to say? He used to say, everybody thinks they have the answer to my problem, but nobody knows how bad my feet hurt. He used to say that all the time. And it was like, all those things that you talk about that you think is a solution to my problem, none of it works. And that's what I heard this morning. I heard the same thing from someone who's still alive. He said to me, everybody's got something for me to do. And I'm like, dude, you're the one that's going to have to decide if you're going to do it. I can map it out for you. I can show you what you're headed towards if you don't want to do it. But when Dad was in the hospital, and they said, well, you got to go to rehab. So he went to rehab and he had some choices. And it was Carolina. Those people should be checked a little bit. Yes. Am I frustrated with them? Absolutely. Do I think you should feed a diabetic a sugary treat, a bowl of Frosted Flakes? Should you give a diabetic an option to have any sort of refined carbohydrate? If you really were in charge of trying to help that person? That makes no sense whatsoever. And then the guy that runs the cafeteria came by the room and asked how things were going. And I just was like, well, they're going fine. You guys are doing exactly what you care to do. You're doing exactly what you care to do. That's the truth. What you care to do is nothing. What you care to do is not work harder, not be better, not throw it and get it caught. You don't care about any of that stuff. All you care about is making your money, going home at the end of the day, getting as much of it as you can, sitting down in your little boardrooms and not having anything to do with people's health. That's what you care about. I'm going to be passionate like this for a while, I think, because now I'm a little bit freed up. Okay, so we're back. So we're talking about why you be making sugar in the middle of the night. And why you wouldn't quit making sugar in the middle of the night. And so you can't quit making sugar. And so what's going to happen is your liver is going to it's going to run out of its own glucose, and then it's going to send the signal out to the body, and it's going to tell the body to send the glucose to the liver, and you're going to start to pack that fat, and you're going to get that fatty liver so that the body can use all that, the liver can use all that for later, and you're going to get that big belly that comes around the middle of you. Just like my father-in-law had, just like my dad had, just like my man this morning. I love the man that came and got adjusted this morning, just like he's got. Because our livers are not functioning properly. So now what's metformin going to do? Metformin's going to come in there, according to these genius guys, metformin's going to come in there and it's going to accumulate inside the mitochondria. It's going to work its way and force its way into your mitochondria, so now it can choke your mitochondria down so it can't breathe. So, you think that's a good idea? I mean, I don't think so. I don't think any of my health and wellness people think that's a good idea. But let's go back to one of our favorite books, Cancer as a Metabolic Disease. And let's listen to the Warburg effect. Otto Warburg was a German scientist guy, right? He got the Nobel Prize before World War One, I think, sometime like that. Let's see, when did he get the? See if I can say when he got the Nobel Prize, but in 1944, his second one. He got his first one in Nobel Prize for Physiology and Medicine in 1931 for his. And he got again in 1944. He got recognized for another one. So, but basically, what he says is that every single cancer cell has a problem. Warburg initially proposed that aerobic glucose fermentation, aerobic glycolysis, was an epiphenomenon of a more fundamental problem in cancer cell physiology, that is, impaired, damaged respiration. He used the metaphor of the plague to illustrate the connection, and he went through this. An increased dependency on energy through glucose fermentation, glycolysis, as viewed as an essential compensatory mechanism of energy production for cell viability following damage to respiration. I just want to make sure that we get that. Dr. Warburg was talking about what is common amongst all the cancer cells. Pretty much all the cancer cells, and I don't know this, I'm just saying that this is what he's teaching, that all the cancer cells, one of the things that a cancer cell has is it has a problem with cellular respiration. It has a problem with mitochondrial respiration. That's what a cancer cell has. And what does it need? It needs more glucose. It needs more glucose. It needs more glucose. So I wonder why they found a spot of cancer on my father-in-law's liver after he had already been on the liver transplant list at Baylor Medical to get a new liver from cirrhosis of the liver, secondary to diabetes. And you know what drug he took in the beginning? Metformin. Because we think we're doing somebody some good. The doctors that took care of my dad and took care of my father-in-law think they're doing somebody some good. They're saying, hey, look, okay, we've done your test and your markers say we've done your blood test and your A1C is all this and all that, and now you fit all of the criteria for you've got diabetes. So what are we going to do? What we're going to do, you got type 2 diabetes, not type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes. And how did you get this type 2 diabetes? Did you get this type 2 diabetes from being healthy or unhealthy? You got it from being unhealthy. So what are we going to do to you? We're going to give you a drug that's going to kill your respiration of your mitochondria in your liver. I don't think that's what they say. I don't think that's exactly the way my man today got explained to him at his doctor's office. When he went into his doctor's office and he got explained to him that, hey, we've got a drug for you that's gonna help you with your diabetes, your type 2 diabetes. And I asked him, what'd you have for breakfast? Sausage and egg biscuit, sandwich. Yeah, sausage and egg sandwich. I said, you throw away the sandwich part? Did you throw away the bread? Well, sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. Yeah, and if we go back, we get ourselves into that deal. That's not what your medical doctor does for you. Your healthcare practitioner, right? Your healthcare practitioner is going to give you metformin, and then what metformin is going to do is it's going to do the same identical thing that happens in a cancer cell. It's going to do the same identical thing because they got to figure out a way. How can we stop this liver that's insulin resistant from making glucose all night long and causing this thick, sticky blood that creates all this other pain that goes along with it? how can we possibly help this person? Well, we'll sell them a drug that kills their mitochondria. That's why I take fish oil. You know why I'm the number one fan of fish oil on the planet? I'm the number one fan of fish oil on the planet because of mitochondrial damage due to oxidative stress that is caused when there's not enough 6:3 ratio or not a proper 6:3 ratio in the cell wall that causes the free radicals to attack the mitochondria and cause damage to the mitochondria. That's why I'm the number one fan of fish oil. So now, what my dad's been doing, and what my father-in-law did, and what this guy's doing, and probably what you're doing, and a lot of people out there are doing, is you're taking metformin. And you know what he told me? He said, my A1C is a 6. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if your A1C is 6. It doesn't matter what your A1C is, because what's happening down below in your feet. And let's talk about that. Because what we're doing is we're killing the mitochondria, we're killing the cell, the ability of the cell, which is going to cause an adapted process. I bet you, I don't even know if we were to Google when I say Google, I go to DuckDuckGo so I could get all the real answers. When I actually run that, I bet you if we looked at, let's just do it for a second before we talk about that. The side effects. I don't know what this is going to say, so we'll just see it. And I don't know where is the best one to go. We got all these different options. I'll choose drugs.com. Don't have any idea what that is. Warning, oral route. See, applies to metformin, oral solution, oral suspension. This is metformin side effects on drugs.com. The first one is death, hypothermia, hypotension, resistant bradyarrhythmias have been reported due to metformin-associated lactic acidosis. Onset may be subtle and include nonspecific symptoms as malaise, myalgia, respiratory distress, can't breathe, abdominal distress. Laboratory abnormalities include low pH, increased ion gap, and elevated blood lactate. The risk of lactic acidosis increases with renal or hepatic impairment. The risk of lactic acidosis increases with renal or hepatic impairment. How would you get hepatic impairment? You would get hepatic impairment if you killed your mitochondria. That's the thing that flips back to our study that we've said 1,000 times on the show. Let me see. All of a sudden, those boys that work at those computer programming places, they spend a lot of time with these new fancy things, and some of them are really cool, and some of them just jack with your whole. They mess up your. They come in here at the middle of the night and they get on your screens, and then you can't find any of your stuff. There's that article that we read, mitochondrial dysfunction article right here. A wide range of seemingly unrelated disorders such as schizophrenia, bipolar disease, dementia, Alzheimer's, epilepsy, migraine, strokes, neuropathic pain, Parkinson's, ataxia, coronary artery disease, cardiomyopathy, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, diabetes, hepatitis C, and primary liver cirrhosis. Have underlying mechanisms in common. Reactive oxygen species, which is your free radicals, mitochondrial DNA damage resulting in mitochondrial dysfunction. The diseases result in mitochondrial dysfunction. All those things, you get Parkinson's disease if you turn the power off to the cell. You can have diabetes if you turn power off to the cell. You can have cardiomyopathy if you turn power off to the cell in your heart, right? If you don't have enough power in the cell is going to malfunction, and wherever that cell is going to be is where you're going to get your disease, right? So if I go to the internet and I look at the side effects, of on drugs.com, one of the side effects is renal or hepatic impairment. Age 65 or older, having a radiological study with contrast, surgery, or other procedures, and excessive alcohol intake or excessive fructose intake. So it's not just alcohol intake, it's drink your juice, drink your orange juice, eat your sugar. That's the same thing as drinking whiskey. As far as your liver is concerned, drinking juices and eating sugar and drinking whiskey is exactly the same thing on the liver, because the liver is having to handle all that fructose, and you're going to end up with a cirrhosis of the liver, and you're going to end up with problems. So what are you going to take? You're going to take metformin, and metformin is going to do what? Metformin is going to kill your respiratory process of your mitochondria so that you can't function, so that the cells can't function anymore. And by not being able to function, they will now not be able to release glucose into the bloodstream when your blood sugar gets lower. That's why. That's how it works. And I didn't make it up. I just read it off the list right there. That's the mechanisms of how that works. So what do they do to people like my dad and this guy and my father-in-law? When they go in there and they say, hey, you got diabetes, do they say, all right, here's what the deal is. In order for you to come back to my office, you now have to go down to the gym. Maybe that's what they do at this new health and wellness hospital. You now have to go down to the gym and you have to work out 4 days a week, and you have to give us a diary of your food, and you have to meet with our nutrition teacher, and you have to make sure that go with the shop with the doc in the grocery store, because we're not giving you any metformin. You're not allowed to have any of this drug whatsoever, because you're not going to change your diet and you're not going to change your ways, and it's just going to lead to your death and destruction. And we know that. And we know that that's going to be the case. So we don't want that to happen to you. So what we're going to do is we're going to help you change your lifestyle. Is that the conversation that you have in your medical doctor's office? I don't think it's ever happened in the history of the medical doctor's office. I think they might say something once and then get you your metformin. I think that's how it works. So, but that's what my guy told me today. He said, well, that's all right. My blood sugar, my A1C is 6 and all that sort of thing. I'm like, okay, that's great. That's really good. How come your wound won't heal on your leg? I'm not sure. Well, I'm on steroids now. And the steroids is now helping the wound heal. Okay, what's a steroid do? It's anti-inflammatory, right? It's bringing the inflammation down. It's making your face all puffy. It's making your arms all puffy. But is it, and I'm not saying there's not a time and a place for someone to take that, but I'm just saying, like, because of our wound won't heal on our leg, and why won't the wound heal on the leg? This is the kicker. How come the wound won't heal on the leg? That's the question we got to ask. Let me see if I can get back over to my stream. Okay, the wound won't heal on the leg because we got this problem right here. And you guys know this, but we're going to talk about it again because it never stops. The reason that I talk about it again is because it never stops. It's the same old game over and over and over again. It's the same old game. These are capillaries. These are capillaries down here. You got an artery that takes blood to your body. You got a vein that brings that blood back to your heart. Your heart's going to pump blood out into your arteries. Your arteries are now, your heart's pumping that blood, and your arteries are full of oxygenated blood. Your oxygen is in that artery. Then that vein, that it's going to go through these little things called capillaries, and I don't know how to blow that up very well, but it's going to go through these capillaries, and then on the other side, it's going to be out of oxygen, because where's the oxygen going to go? It's going to diffuse through into the tissue. Okay, these are very, very tiny things. These little artery to vein exchange points that we call capillary are very, very small. What happens when you add glucose to anything? What happens when you add sugar to anything? It makes it thick and sticky, right? We've talked about that. Thick and sticky. Thick and sticky does not work well with capillaries. What do you do when you have a heart attack? What's Plavix all about? And what's blood thinners? I'm on a blood thinner. Why are you on a blood thinner? Because we got to keep that blood as thin as possible so it'll travel through all these capillaries. That's why we're on a blood thinner. So we got to get that thing to thin itself down so we can't have any clots, we can't have any obstructions, we can't have any problems at all, right? So now we got to take this blood through that capillary. And what happens when you increase your blood glucose? When you eat that sandwich, that sausage and egg bacon sandwich, not the sausage and the egg and the bacon, the sandwich. When you add the insulin, when you add the refined carbohydrates, when you add the blood sugar, refined carbohydrates makes your blood sugar go up. What happens to your blood when your blood sugar goes up? It becomes thick and sticky. It starts to clog these capillaries. Now, these capillaries have a little bypass built into them, so your blood pressure is not going to crash when you clog up all your blood vessels. But you might just want to check and look down on your leg and see if you see those little spider veins growing on your leg. You might just go check and see if that's going on with you. What is that? It's clogging up those capillaries right there. So now what's happening to the tissue? It's not getting any oxygen. It's not getting any nutrients. Fuel and activation is being cut off. If we don't have any oxygen, we don't have any nutrients, how are we going to heal anything? Go look at Christopher Reeve. Google him. Google him. If you want me to Google him, I'll Google him. You guys that are just watching, before and after. Let's just see what we get. Let's just see if we get the before and after picture of Christopher Reeve. Here's your before and after picture. Oh, that's not it. You guys that are on the radio, you can't see it, but maybe you could Google it. If you're at home, all you got to do is Google it. It'll catch you. This picture right here will stun you. There's two different guys right there. There's Christopher Reeve. There's Christopher Reeve, the stud 6'3" athletic Superman actor. And this is Christopher Reeve after he breaks his neck in a horse accident and now has nothing functioning below C3. Now, cause of death. What did Christopher Reeve die from? He died from an infection of a bed sore. Why? Because his body couldn't heal the bed sore. Why couldn't his body heal the bed sore? Because in this particular case, he wasn't a sugar problem. It was a lack of information from the brain that didn't send the information back to the body to tell the body that he had a bed sore. He didn't know, his brain didn't know that he had a bed sore because he couldn't communicate with his brain. Okay, what happens when we can't heal? We can't get oxygen to the tissue. So what dies? The nerve dies. We got inflammation in the area that causes the nerve to die because we've got inflammation in the capillary that's causing that problem. So now we've got this inflammation in the capillary and we're not being able to get oxygen exchange down there. And so now it's not going to heal. And what's dying? The whole tissue is dying and the nerve is dying. And what's going to happen? You're going to get neuropathy and you're going to get extreme pain that's going to fire into your brain. It's going to be excruciating pain when that happens. And this whole mechanism. And he says, well, I got my blood sugar, my A1C is down to 6. I got on my metformin and my A1C is down to 6. But he didn't tell you. What they didn't tell you in that conversation with your doc is they didn't tell you that some of those blood vessels use passive diffusion. We just had this whole story, but we're going to have it again tonight. Passive diffusion, burn your toast in your kitchen. You ever burn toast in your kitchen? If you burn something, leave your sweet potato fries in the broiler for too long, or your okra, put your okra in the broiler and leave them in, forget that they're in there and leave them in there for too long. And then all of a sudden what happens? You burn them and they get smoky. Where does the smoke go? Can you smell the smoke in your living room? Can you smell the smoke in your bedroom when you burn toast in your kitchen? Of course you can. Everybody knows that. It's passive diffusion. The smoke just travels across. We can have a big old fire up in Amarillo and we can smell the smoke down here in Lubbock. right? Everybody knows that. It's passive diffusion. The wind blows it, there it goes. What happens to the glucose in the cell? What happens to the glucose in the cell when you increase the amount of glucose that's there? And you don't have to, and you're not even, it doesn't have anything to do with insulin receptors. You got you've got those cells in that little capillary that we just saw a picture of, and you've got this glucose that's coming in. Here comes the glucose, and the glucose concentration goes up. And when that glucose concentration goes up, that glucose just passively diffuses into that cell, and it just goes across into that cell, that blood vessel cell. And what goes with it? Water. And what happens if you add water to a cell? It makes it fatter. Add water to a balloon. What happens to the balloon? It gets fatter, right? Now, how are you going to get blood? How are you going to get blood through that vessel when all those blood vessels are all swollen up? You know what's running right next to that? Is nerves. It's running all around that place. We got nerves running all around that blood vessel. We got nerves running through all that tissue, all over the place in that tissue. Does a nerve need oxygen to survive? Yep. You ever had a stroke? You ever wonder what happens in your brain when you have a stroke? You lose oxygen to the tissue and the tissue dies, right? The nerves got to have oxygen. Where are they going to get the oxygen when it's all swollen up? They're not. They're not going to get any oxygen, and they're going to be the nerve cells are going to swell up too, and they're going to be super sensitive. And when you sit down and you put your foot on the ground, it's going to hurt. When your knees and your hips, and when you lose the ability to walk, when you lose your knees and your feet, knees, and hips, because your feet, knees, and hips hurt so bad, when you do that, you'll lose the ability to walk and you'll sit down. And when you sit down, you quit driving your brain. And when you quit driving your brain, you might as well call Laura and them over there at Lubbock, at Lake Ridge Chapel Funeral Home, and get your things in order. You might go over there and pick out the urn that you want to have if you're going to get cremated, or you might go over there and pick out the casket that you want to have, because that's where you're headed. And I say that to you out of love. If you're dealing with this, I say that to you out of love, not out of anger. I'm just telling you that I've seen it enough times, and you don't see it enough until you're older, because you don't get to see enough people die. But then once you get to start to see people die, then you start to understand the mechanisms of hey, look, that's not right. And then your dad dies on Saturday, and then a guy that you really like comes in on Tuesday, and he's all swollen up in his face because he's on steroids, because he can't heal the sore on his foot, because he's got neuropathy in his feet from his diabetes that he's got from eating too many refined carbohydrates and not exercising, because he's too dang busy at work. That's what he told me. My life's too fast. I'm too busy. I got too many things going on. You know what your cells, the cells of your foot, do not care what you have on your calendar. The blood vessels in your leg do not care what you have in your calendar. They need to be treated properly. That's the same thing we go back to when we talked about the older son that was all fussy about the younger son getting the party thrown for him after he came home. And the dad said, guess what? It's not your house, son. It doesn't matter what you have on your calendar. You got to get yourself under control. You got to eat well. You got to move well. You got to think well. You got to control your insulin. You got to control your carbohydrates. And I told him, the last thing I told him when he walked out of my office this morning is, if you want me to help you, call me. If I can help you, call me. I don't have any idea if he'll call me or not, because he might be too far gone to call me. But am I going to tell his daughters and I'm going to put the pressure on him? You betcha. I hope you guys have a great night. That's the end of our show. We run out of time. We'll be back tomorrow night at 6 with Life with Jason Clemmons, DC.